Okay, well, hi everybody. I hope you're doing really well. Really excited about today's workshop featuring Joseph Fung, who's a founder himself of kiite.ai as well as Uvaro. And I'll just leave a quick intro of Joseph and then share a little bit about how this workshop will go based on my conversation with Joseph yesterday. And then if we can all do introductions, as I mentioned, that would be great. So Joseph has an amazingly long and impressive bio, so I'll let him dig into his story. But just by way of introduction, he's a serial entrepreneur who currently resides in Waterloo. Multiple ventures that he's done before, including Simple Machines, Forum, Lewis Media, Tribe HR, which was acquired by NetSuite. And then after he joined NetSuite, he founded, after that, he founded kiite.ai as well as Uvaro, which I think a few of you are already using. And I think including Thiago and Steve, I'm not sure if you've already used kiite.ai, but we're really excited about that product. So in terms of like how the workshop is going to go, we're going to talk a little bit about the sales playbook, and it's a great way to wrap up the program because we're all about creating processes that are repeatable and scalable, and being able to create a sales playbook after you graduate from the program is really an objective of ours. Specifically, we're going to focus on a couple things, including customer stories and competitive battle cards. This will be an interactive session, so get ready to share some of your docs if possible. And yeah, so thank you, Joseph, for joining us. I really appreciate it. Why don't we do a quick introductions of everyone, starting with Steve?
Sure. Actually, Joseph already knows me, so I'll just give a bit of background on our relationship. So we were used Tribe HR like when we first started our company. I forget 2012 or we started in 2011, but I forget when Tribe HR was. But we used Tribe for a few years, and then they got sold off, and never been the same since. No, I'm just kidding. And then I re-met Joseph when we were looking for a solution for playbooks. So we signed up with his software Kite, and it's been great. Our playbook's in there. Our new salesperson's been using it. He's really engaged with it, making changes on the fly. So yeah, it's a nice piece of software for us for sure, and helping us. It's going to help us scale as we hire more salespeople. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Glad to have you here, Steve. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Awesome. And I have next Scott.
Hey, Joseph. I'm Scott, the Chief Growth Officer at TrueFan. Yeah, been very much enjoying the DMZ so far. Kind of sad to see it come to an end in only a day from now. But we've had some good wins, I'd say, throughout the program so far. A lot of building on the sales and marketing side, also a fair bit of kind of transitions, I would say, more so than pivots, but some good ones, and thankfully some ones that have also helped us sort of survive and even grow slightly through the period that's hit us in the last month or so. So excited to see some of your work, because now with what we've done on more of the transactional side, we'll be working a little bit more to really optimize our enterprise process and things like that. And I think this will be really helpful as the last workshop.
Amazing. Suhan?
Yeah, hi Joseph, great to meet you. I'm with Sync.com, co-founder Sync.com. Sync.com is the online cloud file storage sharing collaboration platform with a real strong focus on privacy as being our differentiator in the space. So we kind of, we're kind of new to the whole enterprise sales game. So really almost all of our clients are really small business, and basically almost all our sales are very transactional, happen right on the website. So being part of DMZ has really helped us sort of, they paired us up with great EIR to help us really start getting really enterprise sales strategy going. Because we do see a lot of requests coming from larger businesses now for our product, which is exciting. But we're just so used to transactional sales that just the whole world of selling to large enterprises is a new space, is a new thing for us. So we really picked up a lot of the DMZ. We've learned a lot from our EIR, and we've actually even hired our first enterprise sales rep who starts in a couple weeks. Thanks to Scott.
That's a big decision. That's wicked. That's good.
Yeah. So we're excited. To really, it's kind of new stuff for us, the enterprise sales world. But we're excited to take it on, and we see some great potential there.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then we have Laurent.
Yes, hi. Glad to meet all of you guys. I'm the marketing director for Merinio. We're a software that does scheduling and automatically fulfills shift through automated communications. So we've been using Kite for almost a year now. It's been going great. I want to say that Sheila Fung, the person that did the demo and the person that I was in contact with at Kite, was really amazing. So props to her. So far, like the use of the software is great. It's really useful. The next step will be to get everyone using it to its full potential, really going into it and owning it to go use it as a primary source of information for sales, instead of having the old reflex of looking on the drive or asking the person next to you. So that's really our next step on the Playbook side.
Okay. Well, thank you for the kind comments. I took a note of that. I'll be sure to pass that along to the team. We have a Slack channel specifically, kudos for Kite, so I can toss that in exactly there. So thank you.
And we have Anik.
Hi, Joseph. My name is Anik. I'm the co-founder of TrueFan. Work with Scott. Super excited. Don't have the strongest background in sales. I'm more on the product and engineering side, but
Okay.
super excited to learn and listen from you today.
Okay.
And then finally, we have Bemi.
Hi, Joseph. My name is Bemi. I'm one of the program leads in the Accelerator program. I work closely with Michaela on running the program in the Accelerator. Nice to meet you.
Great to meet you, Bemi.
Fantastic. And I don't think I missed anybody. The thing keeps moving, so please let me know if I missed anyone. No. Okay, great. Joseph, please kick it off for us. And feel free to start off by diving a little bit into your story. But I'm really excited about this.
Sure. So I like many people on the entrepreneurial journey, I'm kind of an engineer who shouldn't be engineering anything anymore. I'm purely on the sales and business side of things. I've been building and selling enterprise software, so B2B SaaS since about 2004. And so my deals, I've sold everything from $50 deals to $5 million deals. Sold a couple of companies. One of the things that I always really enjoy is figuring out the mechanics of the selling process in motion. So you'll see as we dig through the talk today, a lot of areas where I try and break them down into little systems. For me, I find that works really well, and it also makes it a lot more scalable for the team. To kick off, I've got really kind of two parts to today's session. At the beginning, I've got some content that I shared in a keynote at the Sales Live Summit in Miami last November. And that's kind of high level on some sales playbook content. And I think it'll give you some interesting food for thought. But in and of itself, I don't think that's enough to really get you running. So we'll switch gears and we're going to do some hands-on workshop content. And these are actually 2 modules repurposed from our sales school. Kite is a sales enablement platform. And I'm going to touch base on Kite a little bit today. It's not a Kite pitch. Everything I talk about today can be done in other platforms. I'd always love it if you used Kite, but I've designed it specifically so you can do whatever you want. You can use whatever tool. We also have a second arm to our business. We run a sales school where we help professionals in other industries get into tech. And it's 12 weeks, 2 hours a day. There's a lot of content. I've actually chosen a couple of modules specifically for building sales playbooks that you can run with. And at the end of this session, you'll have a bit of material. Hopefully it's new material that you don't already have, and you'll be well equipped to run with those. But before I dive in, I'm going to exit presentation mode, and I'd love to hear, kind of coming into today's session, what are some of the topics that you'd like to take away? I can't promise that we'll hit absolutely everything, but I'd love to get some of these down to make sure I hit as many as possible. Would anybody like to jump in? Feel free to just start. I'd love to hear what you hope to take away.
I can start on my side. So for me, one thing that I would find interesting would be ideas of additional ways to structure my playbook that are outside the typical columns linked to the stage of the sales process. So any other things that would be outside of that, special columns, type of material that you really think that are must-haves in
Yep.
Playbook.
Cool. That makes sense. Scott, I think I saw you unmute as well.
Yeah, I was going to say something along the same lines as that. I mean, like, just any outside the box thinking that you've kind of observed or implemented over the course of time when it comes to sales and creating a playbook. Like, I think we've had maybe one workshop already that was pretty thorough, and, you know, obviously a great AIR and Mark, but yeah, I think that would be helpful for me. And even I guess on the enterprise side, like, if you've been through some similar types of crises before, like how you shifted the playbook quickly, or kind of like not pivoted, but added messaging to cater to the new sorts of negatives that you face in that market.
Yeah, that's a great one. Just going to highlight that one for myself. Suhei and Steve, anything specific that you're hoping for? If you're just along for the ride and you're hopeful to learn something new, that's okay too. But if there is something rattling around, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, for
No,
me.
I think.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead, Suhan.
Oh yeah, for me, I'm just along for the ride. Like the whole enterprise sales world is new, so I'm like soaking up stuff like a sponge right now. So nothing specifically, but yeah, I'm just looking to pick up whatever I can.
Cool, sounds good.
Yeah.
Mine is really around what Laurent said originally, is engagement, and how do you get your salespeople to stay engaged and use it to the full potential? Like, how do you convey to them the power of a playbook and the benefits they're going to get from it?
Perfect.
I might,
Cool.
I'd have one thing to add. It might be really granular of a type of information to ask, but any cool integrations that are like outside of, let's say, the usual CRM and sales playbook connection that you think could help us save some time, or that we wouldn't have thought of.
Okay, this is good. I'm going to hop back into presentation mode. You'll see me coming in and out. I have copied these into a note here on the side. So if you see me looking off, it's because I'm going to try and make sure I touch base on some of these. But first off, before we dig into some of the materials on playbooks, I want to give you high level context. This is more of a founder's perspective. I don't think this is going to come up in any other sales specific training. But when I think about how I tackle playbooks myself, how I've scaled my organizations, for context, I've grown organizations from 0 to about 200. So that's the bailiwick of my personal experience. I want to start with this one. One of the things that I've seen in my companies, the companies I've invested in, is that as a CEO, as a founder, your individual capacity is going to be the ceiling, the limit for your company's growth. So this isn't just about sales playbooks, but the way we dissect these things and think about sharing them actually applies to every part of the business. And so even while you're working on the sales playbook, thinking about it from the perspective of how you get really, really good at scaling yourself is important. And I wanted to start off with a very simple example, and this might feel elementary to some of you, so I apologize if it does, but even the idea of using an executive assistant, just the idea of how do you get really effective at downloading information and tips so that you and then your leaders and then their leaders can get really effective at scaling yourself. And I want to share with you one of the first playbooks that I built. It was the hardest one to write down, but it's been the most effective. I'm going to skim through it quickly, and there's some confidential stuff in here, so I'll skip through quickly, but I'll give you an idea. This is actually the playbook I give to all of my EAs, and they use it, and I onboard them. And I'll give you an idea. The table of contents here, you can see there's software tools, meeting types. You'll see I have my contact information. I'm going to jump to one section in particular where you see I talk about my personality type, my dietary preferences, how I like buying gifts for people. When I go to spend a day in Toronto, I go to Soho Innovation Lab. These slides, along with this table of contents, I'll send them over to you afterwards. But I just wanted to start there because just that idea, that practice of having a scratch pad where you can toss down these ideas and thoughts in a shareable format is going to be such a useful skill set. So regardless of the formats, the structures, the topics I include, if one takeaway, you just get used to jotting this stuff down in a shareable place, and even if that's just a Google Doc, or you tag people and they comment, it's going to have a huge impact. Specifically to this one, I've used this to onboard 4 EAs, and every time the document itself gets better. The first time I wrote it, it was just 2 pages of notes, and you can see, there's 12 pages there. Marcy's notes go down another 2, so there's a lot of information in there. Personally, this has been one of the things that's made a big impact for me, but we actually go so far as getting each of our leaders to do this as well. And it's interesting how so many of the tidbits in our own sales playbooks actually start here. Like the tidbits around how we structure a Zoom meeting, how we configure it for recording, what we do to upload those recordings into Vidyard. So even if you just take away, hey, how do I scale myself? That'd be one thing to really anchor on. Now, sitting specifically on the topic of sales. Several of you are using Kite, so I'm not asking you, but for the others, I just love to open it up. What are you using right now for a sales playbook, if anything? You know, what have you got, just so that I understand?
Essentially just using Google Sheets and Google Slides, plus trying, like, when we feel as though we've nailed something down, we'll probably try and like convert that into more of an automated form of having it show up in HubSpot, like in tasks or whatever.
Good. Suhan, I saw you nodding. Similar?
Yeah, no, even less than that. We're just developing our sales book. Like I said, the whole enterprise sales process is new to us, so we're pretty much at ground zero at that stage. Yeah.
Okay, so for a lot of teams, when we ask them something like what their sales playbook looks like, this is just an image from a random blog post. I think I Googled sales playbook and chose images. A lot of people have something that looks like this. And maybe it's broken into folders in Google Drive, or they'll have a Google Sheet, or they'll have a slide deck that actually links to other documents. And it kind of feels like this morass of documents. The one big thing that's a challenge here in this is you'll see how linear this is. Hey, I've got a lead, I do these things. I've got my first meeting, so ask these questions, budget, need, authority. I've got a demo, so do these things. And the challenge is that A, this is all very, very seller-centric, and B, it conveys a very linear process. And the reality is that a buying journey is nothing like this. The buyers are out searching, they're reading some reviews, maybe they sit in a workshop, maybe they jump to one of your demos, they realize maybe we're not the right fit, so they go away for 2 months, then they come back and they talk to an SDR, so they get qualified then. But in the meantime, somebody introduced them to the CEO, so they actually had this weird almost closing conversation, and it doesn't actually match this process. So a couple of things that are useful to anchor on in an enterprise sale is the idea of time. So when you're interacting with a buyer, with their buying process, they're only spending less than 20%, so 17% of their time with you or your sellers. So if you think about the interactions you're having with them, that's only 1/5 of their buying process. There's a lot of other things that they're doing, which means for you, when you think about your sales playbook, it's not just about the things you say on a call, the things that you send them after a call. It's about what are the things that they're going to encounter outside? How do you design those experiences? How do you leave little breadcrumbs or tidbits for them to bump into? And most importantly, how can you be agile? So one of the challenges is a lot of people equate the idea of a sales playbook with the idea of their sales process. And Laurent, you asked a great question. How do I break out of that? Because if you always stay just in that mindset of a sales process, every interaction you have, you're trying to put them through this cycle, and the majority of their time is spent all over the map. Here's an example. You know, this is what their buying journey might be like. Hey, first I'm learning, and then I do some exploring, and then I use the app a little bit, and then I go and I upgrade, and I use something else, and I realize I don't need it, so I downgrade. So you need to really, really focus on agility. And to give you an example, when a lot of companies first start populating their sales playbook, they start with the most important thing, absolutely, the discovery questions, qualifying people. And I mean, you would have seen it. In the last slide, I think I include some of those qualifying questions. You know, they start off with BANT. Do you have budget? Do you have need? Do you have authority? But the reality is, if you've got somebody that's been going through this They've been on your website, they've been in different areas, they know the details, they've talked to somebody, and then you start banting them, they just get pissed off. Like, have you ever done that? Like, have you ever looked at a vendor, you give them a call and you're like, I want to know the pricing for 10 seats for digging to this. And they're like, so what's your budget for the project? And what, is there anybody else involved in the buying process? And I mean, the reality is, especially if you're an executive, it's like, stop asking me that. You know, at the end of the day, I've done all the research I need. For all you need to know, I make the decision. There's no one else involved. You know, I want my answers. And so being able to adapt to those situations is a really important part about equipping your sales reps. So if they don't have that information, they can uncover it. If they've got somebody who wants to move forward, they can. And again, this stuff was originally from a keynote. I'm going to kind of skip through it quickly. We spent a lot of time talking about how normally when we give somebody a playbook, it feels a lot like this. You get this massive tome of information. And the reality is that they need to have something a little bit more like this. And I know not everybody watches football here, but he's actually looking at his playbook. It's a list of plays that he's going to call in the different moments. And if we think about that idea that, you know, we're bringing on sales reps to be professionals, we use the metaphors, those quarterback deals. Well, let's actually trust them to quarterback. You know, let's give them those cheat sheets that they can use to make the right call and take the right action. Can you imagine if the quarterback had to go back to the bench and leaf through their 3,000 plays and read the instructions? And, you know, step one is here's how you pull back your arm and throw a football. It's like, no, let's treat people like adults, like professionals, and help them move quickly. So that's enough philosophy. Let me get into some of the tactics. Number one, if you're going to sit down and build a playbook, we're going to cover some tips today, but I'm also going to defer to more effective authority. Corey Bray, Hillman Sori are two consultants. They're based out of San Francisco. They work with SaaS executives and teams only, a bunch of customers in the Toronto area as well. They've got this book here, the Sales Playbooks, the Builder's Toolkit. It's cheap. Here, let me open up Amazon. You can see. There you go. It's like 25 bucks paperback. It is a workbook. So it's a big book, big fat margins, fill in the blanks kind of thing. It'll walk you through the whole process. If you're skeptical and you want to check it out, the links are in the slides, but Corey also posted the first 10 chapters on LinkedIn as articles. So you can actually see, so if I open up chapter 10, you'll see how he walks through how to fill out the different sections. Like, hey, do these, check off these lists, capture some of these experiences. This is a great resource. 9 times out of 10, like we give these books away. And what we find is that it's a great reference to know what you need to do. As people get their heads wrapped around everything that's in an ideal sales playbook, they often realize they don't have the time to do it all. Bigger companies sometimes hire Hillman and Corey. Smaller firms tend to pick and choose. Through the presentation, I'm going to highlight where you should start. I do not recommend actually starting at the beginning of the book all the way to the end. That's a good process to get everything in a playbook. But if you need to get something usable from day one, there's a couple of other areas I would jump to. So the content I'm going to share today, as well as this book, are very complementary. I highly recommend it. It's a great resource. If you want to build out more selling skills, they also refer to a book called Triangle Selling. Great resource, a lot of tips and tricks. I keep a copy on my desk because there's a bunch of references. Again, it's pretty cheap, but that's my recommendation for content. Okay, number one, getting content behind processes. Scott, I think it was you who said that you convert a lot of the questions into forms onto HubSpot. Do I remember that right? Yeah.
Yeah. We typically try to like include, you know, tasks set up with the rough cadence as people are going through stages of the pipeline. It can be tricky though, because it does kind of create more of like a boxed format, I'd say.
Totally. So we use HubSpot as well personally. One of the nice things about HubSpot is you can add those things. And sometimes it feels frustrating because you can't add all the reports and all the constraints you want in HubSpot. But I'd actually say it's a really good thing. I'm going to give you an example. Salesforce here. One of the things you can do in Salesforce is include paths at the top. So the idea is if this deal is at the needs analysis stage, it's giving you the guidance for what you need to do at that stage to win. Okay, now that makes a lot of sense intuitively. It's, hey, the customer's at this stage, I need to give them this information. Now, the problem with systems like this, though, is when you move the prospect back a stage. So if we said, oh, actually, they're not quite ready yet, we need to do some more qualification, all of this guidance disappears. And if we think about that original journey that the customer is meandering around, you end up getting these little snippets where the system tells your reps to do X and only X, and they can't cover all of the other things that they need to cover as well. So one of the things that we are always recommending is make sure that your CRM, your systems, offer people guidance, but don't hide everything at this stage. So an example would be in HubSpot, I would give a thumbs up to something like the estimated deal size or the decision maker are required fields to get out of the demo stage. Sure, that's valid qualification. I see people do things, no, you can't do this in HubSpot, which I like. I see this in Salesforce all the time. Well, if you're on the demo stage, you shouldn't be negotiating pricing. So we're actually going to hide the recommended discount field. Because if you're a sales rep and you're only at the demo stage, you should not be talking about pricing. So they actually remove it from the form. And they do it from the perspective of, well, I don't want to distract. We have 150 fields, so I'm going to hide some of them. And the reality is then you see sales reps doing things like, okay, well, I'm going to move this deal into negotiating so I can put in the information that I need. And then I'm going to move it back to this stage, and people are fighting against the system. So try not to hide information. It's okay to offer guidance, okay to add requirements, but try not to hide. The second thing would be to make sure you're designing for search and not training. This is the easiest mistake to make. And this is one of the things that we really, truly internalized looking at the kite data. So one of the things that we see differentiating new, less experienced reps from experienced, successful reps is the way they use the tools. A new rep, their usage pattern tends to look like a browse and read. They find the sales process playbook and then they go through a lot of the content. They find a playbook about customer stories and they go through the content. A sales rep who's more experienced almost never browses. They only use the search, and they're in and they're out. And their usage patterns are very different. Now, ultimately, what you want to do is you want to guide your reps to be more like your successful ones. And if your successful ones get no value out of a system, they're only going to tell your junior reps, don't trust it. So I know Steve, Laurent, you asked a great question. How do we make sure people are engaging? And this one here, number 2, is actually right about that, designing for search. So I'm going to give you a couple of specifics on that. And this is not sales playbook specific. This is actually a lot about marketing. Like, think about SEO. If we're thinking about something like Weaver apps, if we think about somebody who's got a problem and they're trying to improve kind of a number of systems across geographic areas, people are going to be searching for multiple sites, transportation logistics between factories. They're not going to be searching for forms manager. So your marketing team is likely generating content and buying ads around the problems and the way they describe it. Similarly, when you think about your sales playbook, think about what people are searching for. Like, yes, you might have a case study about a specific product, but your sales rep in that moment might be thinking about the industry, might be thinking about the sector, might be thinking about the pain point. A really good example, one of our customers, on their website, they segment their sectors into things like high tech, manufacturing, but their sales reps are much more specific. And we've seen customer stories that reference furniture, weed, not cannabis or pharmaceutical, but weed. Like, that's what we see showing up in the searches. So choose words your sales reps are going to use. And then, of course, kind of like in your searching in your content online, Google search can analyze long form text like documents better than spreadsheets. Same thing applies to any kind of sales enablement tool, even if you're using things like Google Docs or Evernote. So having kind of long form text data is going to give you more words, better searching. And so those are some of the things to consider. I want to keep the ball rolling, but any questions on this as I'm going? Is this a good level? I'm happy to skip and get more into the workshop stuff if this is not as helpful, but I'd like to just do a quick pulse check before I keep.
This has been helpful for me.
Okay.
Yeah, good here.
Okay, nice. Big one is making it easier for your team to have conversations. So a way to think about this is a shorthand that I use, is the idea of the value of a conversation is more than collateral. So think less about how do I give my sales team something to send out? Because if they send it out, they have no control over it, versus letting them have a conversation. And as we get into customer stories, you'll see that exactly. But here's a really good example. A lot of companies will say you need buyer personas, and you do, absolutely. What I have on the screen right now is a beautiful piece, and if you Google buyer persona, you'll find something like this. This information is incredibly important for defining your ICP, establishing your marketing plans, your ad spend, your messaging. However, I'd argue it serves zero purpose inside a sales playbook. I just want to really articulate, as a CEO, I know this stuff is very valuable. However, I might show this to a sales rep during their onboarding, but I would not put it into a sales playbook. And the reason why is, as a sales rep, if you imagine that person, you just hired a great seasoned account executive, they're going to open up enterprise accounts for you, they're on the phone, they've got their cheat sheet open, they're calling up a new planning director and they want to know what to say. If this is what comes up, there's so much that's distracting, there's no key messaging, they can't use this in the moment. So we advocate something that's a little bit more like this. Now, these can link to a more detailed version. It's good to have them, but you'll see here, the idea is, if you're talking to that operations manager, that facilities director, what are the discovery questions you ask? What are the pain points they have? And again, think about a cue card, not a placemat, because these questions or a useful insight, they help your sales rep have a conversation intelligently with that person. Like, if you reflect on yourself, if somebody was trying to sell you, the fact that you might have gone to a specific university, if I go back to the fact that maybe you're an extrovert versus an introvert, that you get tech, I mean, that's not going to give them a lot to know to have a conversation with you. But if they've got a couple of good questions like, did you attend any accelerators? How did you hire your first sales rep? Like, those questions to you are going to drive a better conversation. So yes, this stuff is useful, but not really by a sales rep. This is really about strategy and planning, and oftentimes those get convolved. I want to keep that ball rolling. In your sales playbook, tell your buyer something they don't know. And this is really difficult to scale. And ultimately, to do this, you need to get really good at moving information between your teams. But here's a couple of examples. So every day, today, right now, your team is bookmarking useful insights and resources. They're hearing feedback from their prospects, and they're having all these online chats. They're on LinkedIn, they're otherwise. Identifying that micro content. The kind of stuff that you would look at on LinkedIn and go, oh, that was valuable, like. And capturing and getting it disseminated across your team is one of the most important skills and processes. So example, in our business, we work with a lot of heads of sales. Sometimes that means that they're letting sales reps go. Sometimes that means they're hiring sales reps. Hey, right now, there's all these lists out there of people who are laid off and companies that are hiring. And so we keep a couple of them in our back pockets because we share them with heads of sales because they're useful and they often don't know about those specific links. Again, that's stuff that's just being shared on social, but it's not like I get that all the time. It's our sales reps, our SDRs, our support people, they're the ones who find it. So making that easy to share internally is really, really important because that's what you can have in a conversation. So Laurent, you had a great question about how do we get outside that idea of just columns for stages, thinking about playbooks that are just collections of customer stories, battle cards, which we'll get to, or useful industry terms. Shopify uses them and calls them conversation starters. So it's like, what are the things I can use to start a conversation? Now they actually go so far as saying, hey, each of these things are the things you can reach out to a prospect for and say, hey, I found this thing, I thought you might find it useful. You know, not trying to sell, just reaching out saying, here's a resource and I was thinking of you and I thought it might help. And having a place to capture those is good. We also have one specifically for industry knowledge. You know, if we see a newspaper article, if we see something on economist.com, if we see a blog post about the industry, we just toss it into that playbook. And then anyone in our team can reference it. And it's useful in those dialogues. Now, of course, we bias towards articles that speak badly about our competitors. And that's really helpful. You don't have to use that tactic, but it helps us. So lots of different ways to tackle it. The last tip specifically from the high level is giving your reps what they're looking for. Now, this is actually the crux of my first comment when I said that the book by Corey and Hillman is really good, but isn't the starting point I recommend to you and your teams. So Google, look online. I highly recommend it. Look for like, what are the things in a sales playbook? What should I have in a sales playbook? Sales playbook checklist, all of this. This is actually a list of 10 points from the website of a very well recognized piece of software in the sales tech space. Not going to call them out. Great piece of content marketing. I mean, it generated a lot of clicks. I think it was like ranked number 2 when I did my search. So it did the right thing. It generated leads, it generated eyeballs. But again, they wrote it with the idea of getting you to their page to buy their software, not to actually help you build the right sales playbook. And I always do this hand raising thing, so I did this keynote. I'm not going to bother. So this is the list on their blog post. What we did is we took a look in the 5,000 sales playbooks we power. What do the experienced sales reps search for? What do they use? What content gets added? And we looked at the top most used content. All the ones I crossed out didn't show up in the top 10 in terms of ones that were actually used. So, I mean, number 1 and 2 didn't even show up in the top 10, and the order all switched around. So here's the actual top 10 from usage. If you think about it that way, you know, some of this won't be surprising. Onboarding schedule, totally. You have a sales playbook, it's most often used to onboard new reps. But what they're using is the schedule, not reading through all the assets. It's like, what do I have to do day by day, week by week? And then number 2 here, discovery questions. So again, if you go back to those previous slides where I had a couple of personas and some good conversation starters, some questions to ask, those discovery questions are super, super useful because if you're a sales rep, and if you know how to run a conversation, you know how to run a good meeting, you know how to do good qualification, if you're given a set of 5 good discovery questions, you can know nothing about the product and you can take a fresh prospect and get them to the next stage. I'm going to come back to that. Everybody, when they hire their first sales rep, starts off by saying, I've sold because I know the product really deeply. So I assume my sales rep needs to know the product really well too. And sales reps tend to do the same thing. They say stuff like, if I have confidence in the product, I can sell really well. However, what we see really strongly is that best sales reps can know 0 about the product if they know enough about the market and have good discovery questions. Because ultimately, it's not about feature A, B, C, D. It's like a feature parade or, you know, or one of those cruise boat tours. You look on the left, you'll see this part of this, and the tour guide keeps talking. Really, what they need to do is ask really good questions that uncover pain points, uncover a need, and then you say, okay, let's get into a demo. And on the next session, we're going to dig in deeper. And if you're a brand new sales rep and you don't know the product well enough yet to do the demo, you bring someone with you. So I don't mean to say that someone can have a successful sales career not knowing the product, but I mean, they can be effective day 1 on new leads with 0 product training if they have the right discovery questions and they're thinking about the prospect's pain points. Now, top 3. Again, onboarding schedule I took off because that's not really the top reps. It's really about the new reps. discovery questions, customer stories, battle cards are really where we want to emphasize. We don't have enough time today to do a real discovery question workshop. Always happy to share more. I think you guys already spent a bunch of time on it too. So I wanted to focus on customer stories and battle cards. I pretty much wrapped up some of the high level stuff, but to recap it, the 5 tips that we had was, not getting the content. You can read all this. I'm going to share the slides. The crux of it is if you think about some of these key items, they're going to give you a good foundation to sell like a champ. And when I do the keynote, we usually have a lot of sports metaphors. I want to jump into some workshop content though, but before I do, does this spark any questions? Anything you disagree with? I'd love to hear.
Definitely nothing I disagree with, but I think the point that you made at the end about like, you're really not needing to know anything about a product makes a lot of sense. I think you could probably spend a lot of like unneeded time initially with sales reps, like going over that type of stuff, or when it's not necessarily going to be part of what gets them to what they're there to do or what you want them to do.
Yeah, exactly it. And many of you have enough experience that this is probably goes without saying, but just in case, one of the things that's really easy to do as a founder is to forget that as a founder, you have a bit of pixie dust, and the way you sell can't actually be replicated by a sales rep. As a founder, you know the product intimately, and what you're actually doing is you're just speaking with so much passion and enthusiasm that people want you to win and they want to be along for the ride. And a sales rep can't conjure that magic. They actually can't. So they have to sell like a sales rep, which means doing different things than us. And that means structured discovery, uncovering pain, running effective meetings. Sounds kind of boring and mechanical because it can be. But the big thing is making sure that we don't just say, hey, ride along with meetings and do what I do.
I think that for me, something that really opened up my eyes, if the term is right, is that I kind of lost track or focus on the design for search. When I was building my own playbooks for myself, when I was in sales, I would always design for search because I would use them in the middle of a call or something like that. But when I did it for the entire team, I kind of switched to a focus where I wanted to put everything, everything they might need. And since you have a search, like a search bar in Kite, I was thinking, well, they'll just write whatever they want and they'll find it in the playbook. But sometimes the words are not right, and it was a design flaw more than a like word choice or whatever.
So I wanted to take a moment to give a couple of quick examples. I do not want this to come across like a commercial for Kite, but I want to give you an example of what we're using, just to give you an idea. And specifically because Laurent, you got a question about integrations, I'll touch base on something. What I have pulled up here is a playbook with a number of competitive battle cards. These are ones that we actually use, and I'm going to come back to them. When I think about the playbooks that I have favorited, the ones that I use frequently, these are some of the ones here. This disco demo playbook is a good example. We run a discovery call that's 30 minutes and intended to include a very, very brief demo. So our product is new enough. Most people have never gone on it and bought sales playbook software. So what we find is during discovery, we need to show them a little bit. Not every company does a bit of demo on discovery. We do. So one of the playbooks I use regularly is a disco demo. It includes some basics like reminding me as a sales rep, make sure I check in on the time, make sure I appreciate them. If I'm a brand new sales rep, I've got a bit more information. So our brand new reps will actually keep this up and they'll quote it. Like they'll say, hey, I appreciate you taking the time for today's call. Just confirming, we got 15 minutes scheduled. Does that still work for you? A more experienced rep doesn't need the script. I just need the reminder. We keep for us the demo sequence. And Laurent, here's a good example. We use this to organize a meeting. Before a meeting, I'll come in and I'll say, you know what, for this prospect, I think we want to talk about personalizing more than onboarding. So I'm going to drag that up. And you know what, I'm going to do search as well. And so I'll drag that up. And so I'll actually design how I want my meeting to go before I go into it. Now that's very different than here's my process overview. We do have a playbook for our sales process overview, but this is one that I used just for a meeting. And then another example, I was looking for that earlier, Callum's cheat sheet. Let's pull this up. This is one that one of our reps pulled together. He keeps this up on his second monitor, and you'll see he's got a ton of stuff in here. He keeps it up for all of the miscellaneous things that he might want to reference, and he drags them from our other areas. So this is never anything I would have made for a rep. Like I never would have said, here's all the things you need, but these are the things that Callum said that he uses on a regular basis. So he just keeps it up on a second monitor. And you can see he has stuff like his 30-second pitch. I'm guessing he drops that into emails all the time because he created a copyable element. Our updated pricing, he keeps them on hand. So it gives you an example of how you can have a process overview. You can create collections, but more importantly, making it easy for people to remix. Callum keeps this open. A lot of our customers, me included, will use things like a Chrome extension, and Kite has this, but there's a lot of other apps that have both an app, an extension, a combination. So you don't have to use our platform for this. But for example, I'll use Kite's extension to capture content, but more often I use it to grab my snippets. So I personally have favorited several cards in our workspace. So if I had favorited, say, the pricing card, it would show up in my extension. And so to give you an idea, when I open the extension, it starts on my favorites, and you could see, hey, if I'm accepting a LinkedIn connection, I don't writing the random thanks all the time. So I keep that on hand. I do a lot of work with the marketing team. So I actually keep our colors because I always forget the color codes. My calendar links I use all the time, not just in my email client. There's already a button from HubSpot in my email client, but I use it when I'm in LinkedIn. I use it when I'm chatting. I'll use it in Slack. And so again, that idea of making it available all over. So Laurent, I only bring it up because you asked about the integrations. Let's get into some of the workshopping stuff. Okay, we're going to talk about customer stories, and we're going to talk about battle cards. Nuhaila, you had sent out the request for people to bring their battle cards, their customer stories with them, right?
That's right, if they
Okay.
have them. And then also
Cool.
in the email yesterday, so I also understand if you know, it was a short notice, but you are also virtual, so you kind of you can pull it, you know,
Yeah.
on the screen if you want to. The other thing I want to say is if there's anything confidential, sensitive, or if you just don't want it to be you know, recorded, just let me know, and I'm happy to pause the recording.
So to keep it easy and to kind of help avoid that, and also just to keep momentum, instead of having people share specifically what they have on their screen, we're going to do some co-creation. There's the opportunity, we're going to do some stuff together, also the opportunity for you to kind of work along. So if you want to keep a notepad open or a Google Doc or a Word doc, you could do the exercise in your own stuff as well. There'll be plenty of opportunity, and I'm going to send these slides out too. So don't feel like you have to watch exactly what's on the screen. So number one, first lesson, case studies are not customer stories. This is a screenshot from our website. It's a case study. I'm not saying they're invalid, like that they're pose no value. And I've seen like there's some great case studies on several of your websites. They serve a purpose. Generally, it's around inbound marketing. It's about, you know, that person who's meandering around so they can find their information. But for a sales playbook, they don't serve a lot of use. A story, in essence, is something that can be shared verbally, that's memorable. You know, if we think about that idea of you tell a story, they have structure so that people can remember it. They've got repetition, making it easier to remember, like all those structures. They have like once upon a time, happily ever after, because it's an easy, familiar story. The reason why you need to be really good at stories is because they're shorter than a case study. They're much more compelling, and something that's not obvious at all. Again, I share this because we see it in the data. If you are really good at customer stories, you get fewer objections. So if you're really good at weaving customer stories into your sales cycle, you will build more confidence in the buyers, and as a result, you'll have fewer objections, and you won't need to spend as much time writing objection handling content in your sales playbook either. So we're going to do this together. So I'm not just kind of doing this artsy fartsy. I'd like a volunteer. We're going to use one of your case studies or customers as a case study and craft that story together. So I'm hoping there's somebody who's comfortable speaking about one of their customers in more detail in today's call. Anybody want to jump in?
I mean, I can. I don't really mind.
Cool. Okay, so for context, everybody else, you can do this how you want. You can work on this on your own document. If you are, hopefully you'll be willing to share at the end. Or you can just watch and ride along. That's okay. Again, you're going to get these slides. Scott, if you don't want us to share this content at the end, that's okay too. I'll delete it before I send out the slides. So I'm going to take this out of presentation mode, and I'm going to speak through a couple of things here. So all good stories need a few elements. If you look online and you find stuff, there's a bunch of frameworks like 5-sentence story writing, 7-sentence story writing, and they talk a lot about things like the intro, the crisis, the build-up, the climax. This is actually a simplified version of the same thing. But for the purpose of get a story that's short that you can use in a sales call, this is all you need. So the protagonist, it's the company, ideally the individual at that customer. The villain is the problem that they're encountering. They're losing money, things aren't going smoothly. The climax, what were the features, what's the solution they used, and then what's the new better reality? So let's try and do this together. Scott, can you share with us, what was in the customer you're thinking of? Who's the protagonist? What's the company or the role? If not the company name, then industry, firmographics.
In terms of like competitor?
No, the customer that you're thinking of. So
Yeah,
customer
okay.
that had success with you, yeah.
Yeah. The brand director, it would be is the customer.
Okay.
Job title.
And can you share the company name or the industry size? Some more about it.
Yeah. For like an influencer, one of the bigger influencers, but also agency owners and like business people.
Well, think about a specific one. I'm hoping.
I mean, like just out of curiosity, I hate going back and forth over this. I don't really mind sharing anything, but like, where's the recording going? Like, what is this going to be used for?
Nuhaila, can you share?
So for us, the HR manager at a large theme park, La Ronde, Six Flags Park in Montreal, had an issue contacting their employees to fill out shifts or to replace absences, since they had 6 collective agreements inside the same park and over 1,000 employees. So once we gave them the tools to combine an automated kind of mapping of their collective agreement rules plus automated calls and texts, they could, without any frustration or mistakes, fill out their shifts automatically in seconds without having any grievances or problems with employees.
That's great. As a quick check, you mentioned it was a theme park. I didn't catch, did you share the name at the beginning?
Yeah, it's La Ronde, the Six Flags Park in Montreal. Yeah.
Okay, nice, that's perfect.
Yeah. The big problem before, like, it was frustration, frustration and a bit of despair, since as soon as the weather would change, they would have to do 100 calls, if not more, in a second to fill shifts, because customers were coming in and they weren't expected.
I believe it.
So after that, it was kind of more of a feeling of security and calm, let's say, since they knew that the system would respect every collective agreement rule and do it on its own. So they kind of just start the system and go do something else, and employees just come in. Nice.
So I love the additional context. Even the first story that you shared on its own, I think it captured it. When we get into the mastering points on the next one, I think it can help you tighten it up a bit more even. Suhan, did you have, it looked like you were going to share something earlier, but you were muted?
Sorry, no, actually, I don't have any because I told
Okay.
you we have a sale. We're still at ground zero, but yeah.
Okay.
I don't have anything to share it now. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to jump forward to just the idea of what you could do with these stories. So using this framework, hopefully we'll let you get through it quickly, but mastering is going to let you kind of polish it. And I don't mean master like mastering a skill. I do mean like mastering a song. You know, how do you polish it up so it's shippable? Number one is to confirm the hero. This is an important one. This is super, super important. Nobody on this call made the mistake, but this is a mistake I hear most often. People craft a story as the brand director was having these issues, you know, we came on board and showed them this and that, and now they look really good. As you phrase that though, that can sound like we did the action. If you do any reading about the hero's journey, I mean, classical journey, you start in the safe spot, go to the unknown. The hero encounters the wise wizard or mentor, Luke Skywalker, bumped into Obi-Wan Kenobi, Yoda. They give them some pearl of insight, but it's the hero that's actually doing the work. Confirming that your story is written such that the customer is the hero, so they see themselves in that. And so, Scott, your example was perfect. The brand director took the information you gave, combined it with some others, and crafted this report so they looked amazing. Like, that's incredible. That's perfect. Every customer wants to be the hero. And so in your customer stories, if they're the hero, they're going to be much happier than if it looks like you came in and solved the day. Everything else here, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. Keep it short, look for memorable phrases. Slide slinging software is actually one from a customer quote. So we put that into one of our customer stories because it's super memorable and the alliteration is a lot of fun, so customers remember it. Add your metadata for search. Laurent, you had that comment about searching. So that's things like the tags that you choose to use. You could have additional information below. So for example, if this is on a Google slide, put it into the speaker notes. If this is a Google Doc, your first paragraph can be the story. And then down below, you could just put in a bunch of additional words. What were the customers? What was the competitors? What was the industry? Just making it easier to find. Because again, your sales rep is not going to say, I'm looking for the Gary Vee story. They're going to be looking when they go, oh shit, do we have any entrepreneurs that are influencers? Okay, founder, story. So making sure that you use the words they're going to use. On the right is an example out of one of our playbooks, like actually out of one of our playbooks. And so when I tell the story, typically this will pop up if I did a search for like onboarding story. And that's how I first found this one, because I didn't write it. And so when this popped up on my sales call, absolutely I could say, it was like, oh yeah, we worked with OpenCare. Our contact there was just promoted to an SDR manager and was complaining because onboarding was non-existent. She felt like she was failing her new hires. And she used Kite and our templates and really quickly in 1 week reorganized what she already had. And then when she shared it with her new employees, the first comment she got was, wow, your onboarding is really organized. And she knew that she had success. Now, I told you that story, and I don't know if you could tell, but I was looking at the screen at you, not over what I had on the right, because the bold things that I had gave me enough to remember what phrases to use. And so when we talk about like formatting it for scannability, that's what I mean. It's like in that moment, I can look at it. I was like, oh yeah, red, it was non-existent. Green, it was a success. As a sales rep, I can get that and quickly turn around and sound like that story's mine, even though I never wrote it. And you'll see there's nothing in here that's about using sophisticated software. This could be a Google Doc, this could be a spreadsheet. Let's give me an example, another one. Battle cards. This will be really fast. If you do a search for competitive battle cards on Google, you're going to find screenshots like this. Similar to what I was saying earlier, this isn't actually usable by a sales rep. This could be useful for training, you know, giving people some context, but it's not really useful in the moment. When you're thinking about battle cards, really what you need to know is this simple Venn diagram. there's an area in your product and your business where you win deals. There's an area where you lose, a bit of overlap where you battle. And you can read all this. But the big thing is your battle cards should help you stay in the green area. They also help you uncover the red area. And if you do, cut bait, don't bother selling, especially at the stage you're at. And as a founder, it's so hard to do that. It really is. They're like, I know I could solve your problems. I know I can fix this. I really want to understand the need. But if you get a bad deal, it takes you a long time to close and they're likely to churn anyway. So a really good battle card helps a customer say, oh, I like that green area. I'm going to stay here. And it helps you separate them. So, ideally you can say something like, let me think of a competitor. Okay, sync.com, Dropbox. The customer goes, well, we're using Dropbox and the features look really comparable. I don't know if we really want to switch. And if you can identify that separation, that'll be the real driver. And you said that you won on security and encryption, right?
Yeah, that's always been our focus, at least when we started the company. Yeah, just a great level of encryption, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Now the big thing, ideally, is like the where you win isn't where you believe your differentiator is. Mm-hmm. It's where customers choose you for. Now, I don't know your customers. It's probable that they pick you because of the security. I believe that. Mm-hmm. It might also be, though, that they pick you because, I don't know, maybe Dropbox and Box are faceless companies that never answer the phone. And they like the fact that you answer the phone. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Or they like the fact that you're Canadian because you store data in Canada. I don't know.
Yeah. You're right on some of those. Yeah.
Sure, there you go. Mm-hmm. So when they bring it up, the ability to say, yeah, no, we're completely different. Because if you care about this and you do this, people buy us. If you care about that, people buy them, and you should buy them if you care about that. And that's really what the battle card helps you do, where you win, where you lose. So I'd love to quickly, same thing, let's try and produce a battle card. Are you comfortable doing this one, Suhan?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. I had suggested Dropbox. We don't need to. Do you pick a competitor? Who's one you compete with?
Dropbox is obviously the biggest fish in this space, so you might as well use Dropbox. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Dropbox personal or for teams or business or whatever they call it.
Yeah, say Teams. I know they have a Teams product that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, where do you win when you go head to head? Why do customers buy yours?
A few reasons. Yeah, basically, basically greater level of privacy and security in terms of us having less access or no access to your data.
Okay, so
being Canadian,
you have no access to their data.
Yeah, if they don't want to have the password protect feature, we can't even read their data. So yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes being in Canada, for Canadian companies, compliance reasons, they need to have their data in Canada. So that's another area that we can win in.
Cool.
And even, I know it's a cop out, but even price, we are slightly more affordable in Dropbox too. So
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where would they win? Like hands down, where are they just the better product?
There are some features that they probably have that we don't have in terms of some administration features for larger teams they would have that we currently don't have.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like when I think when we sell ERP, a lot of people talk about like GRC, like governance, risk, and compliance stuff. So like GRC controls. Is that a fair way? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Where else? Why else might somebody choose Dropbox beyond just the admin controls?
I think one, they're obviously they're better known, but assuming they're talking to both of us, I would say another reason they might choose them is trying to think here. Yeah, they do integrate with more other third-party platforms than we do. So say if they use certain third parties, we may not integrate yet. So they probably have more third-party integrations. That would be another one.
Sure.
Yeah.
They're a heck of a lot bigger.
Yeah, and of course, and they're a lot bigger as well. Yeah.
Okay. I'll come back to this one though. But this is the reason why I picked that one is because no one would argue with it. You know, if somebody actually said, I want to buy from a bigger company, like there's almost no point in fighting that battle. So it's a really good example of a where you lose.
Okay.
And I'll come back to why, but where do you battle? Where do you think, I don't mean where your feature's equivalent, but where would a customer look at it and go, I could go either way. Like I could trade them off.
Yeah, that in-between zone would probably be, yeah, it could be little things where, you know, they like our product. It's pretty much fits all their requirements. Yeah, it just could be the fact that basically we're more we're more open to, like, we're communicating more with them. We're just basically more available, more accessible, perhaps.
Well, let me try and kind of walk you through a little bit. So,
Yeah.
I haven't actually used sync.com, so I'm guessing.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you both do the desktop syncing, so you don't have to log in. Okay. And do you have a mobile app?
Yes.
Okay, so great. If cross-platform was comparable to me,
Yes.
both you check the box.
Yeah.
Do you have a free trial or a free period?
Yeah, we have a free trial, just like they do, like, or you actually a free offering, yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. So these are important because these are areas where you can compete. But you don't want to get stuck there. So a battle card, ideally a battle card, the way you use it lets you say, we're like A, they're like B. If you care about A, you should just pick us. If you care about B, you should just pick them. And then ideally, you're choosing things that are truthful, but make A sound way more desirable than B. So if I was going to cherry pick these, the ones that I would actually look at would be the GRC ones and kind of deeper pockets. Whereas for you, I would emphasize things like security and value. You don't need to compete on price. But the way you would use this is like, here's a competitor name. It's like Dropbox, you know, and we win. It's like, this would let you say, if someone says, how do you compare to Dropbox? You know, they're a competitor, right? You say, no, we don't really compete head to head because we serve two different buyers. If you really care about privacy and security and about good value, people choose us. If people care about a lot of GRC features and optimizing all the different bells and like pressing buttons and toggles for compliance, or they just want to have deeper pockets so they can sue them, they'll pick Dropbox, and I'm okay with that. And that simple comparison lets you deflect competitor objections and lets people go, oh no, I like being the A-type person better. And that helps, you know, kind of, a lot of sales teams will use a phrase like put kind of ring circle around or fence off a competitor because it kind of puts them into a bucket. We're getting close to the bottom of the hour, so I'm going to quickly pull up this. Mastering a battle card. Surprise, surprise, is very similar to mastering a piece of content from a customer story. And the idea, again, is this doesn't need to be, you don't need an app for battle cards. There are a lot that are out there. Generally, I'd say they're for larger firms that have a lot of competitive intel. But what your team needs is short snippets like this. The only difference that I have here on the battle card from that customer story is whereas I had said, make sure the customer is the hero in the customer story, on the battle card, the ideal is if you can actually reference one of your customer stories. Because the real 1-2 punch is when they're like, hey, you're like Dropbox. You're like, oh yeah, like this A-type and B-type person. And they're like, oh, really? That's great. And you're like, oh yeah, like a good example is like we flipped the brand director from Gary Vee over that exact thing. Here's their story. And they play really, really well together. But you'll see on the right a couple of things. Same thing, optimized for search. I've got the tagging. We wanted to make sure there was a lot more competitive intel that could be searchable. So we linked to another document. You could see where we use the same convention, the green and the red for where we lose and where we win. Oh, this is actually the one for slide slinging software, the customer that actually flipped them over mentioned it.
I gotta jump, guys, because I have a call coming up here, and I just want to go to the washroom. But this was really great, Joseph. I appreciate your time, man. Thank you.
Pleasure, Scott. Good to meet.
Yeah, you too. Take care, guys.
Cool. That's perfect time to wrap up. Laurent, Suhan, we're going to send this out afterwards, but I'd love to hear what were some of your key takeaways from the session today?
Yeah, I think the whole thing of creating these battle cards and creating really sort of identifying where you win, because obviously you're not going to win in every area with your competitors, and sometimes you can just kind of throw your hands up and say there's no way we can beat them because they're big and stuff. So I think sort of identifying your strengths and where you can battle and where you can win was useful, I think. And I think I like the idea of just basically, because sometimes you may have brands that you're just not allowed to put on your website, but just kind of sharing the stories verbally. It's nice. It's good insight. It's simple, but never really thought of it that way. But you can use it in your stories. Yeah.
Laurent, what about you?
So on my side, I have quite a few things. But generally, the way that it's designed, to design my playbook, the types of content to enter, I really like the idea of, instead of having a persona, having the type of questions that this person might be asking on an initial call or whatever, so that you're more equipped to talk with them instead of understanding them. Understanding them comes before the call, not during the call. Except that all the micro content, all the conversation starters, industry terms, all of that stuff, it's all stuff that I kind of put in other documents, but I've never put in my playbook. It's just I empty my head as I learn them, but I've never really entered them in my playbook. The Chrome extension, I didn't know it existed, and it looks really cool. I don't really use that much prepped up customer stories. It's all stuff that just kind of flow as we go through a conversation. But I guess that looking back, we're always using the same ones, so we might as well just make them better, really take the time to build them correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And my battle cards were way too long and unnecessarily detailed, so that the model was really interesting.
Perfect. The one thing I'd love to come back to, my first slide, if you remember, was getting really good at scaling yourself.
Yeah.
Getting those customer stories written down is one of the best ways to scale yourself. As a founding team, one of the best hacks you can do is, if you're worried, if you don't even have the time to do this framework on the customer stories, just use a tool like Vidyard, Loom, any of the video recording tools, and just get one of your founders to tell that story. And just record it. And then just link that in your playbook somewhere. It's like, oh, the XYZ customer story? Yeah, sure. And they just talk for 2 minutes. And at least you've got it documented now, and someone else later can turn it into written form.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just had to start somewhere, that's the easiest.
Sounds good. Well, it looks like we are running out of time. It's exactly 1:30 p.m. And I know, Joseph, you had to hop off, but I want to say thank you so much. That was fantastic. I really appreciate it. And thank you folks for joining.
Thank you very much, Joseph. That was great. Thank you.
My pleasure. Anytime.
I'd love to see the slides. If you can share, that'd be awesome. Yeah.
I'll get them sent over right after my next meeting.
Thank you so much.
Excellent.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Have a nice day.